Hello, medieval history students. I want to start you out here, directing your attention to that advertisement right there. Go ahead and read that. Okay, so this was an advertisement by Nike. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything, just do it. And to give you a little bit of background or context on that, you probably already know about this, or a lot of you do, or you heard something about it. Just recently, and a few years ago, this player here, Colin Kaepernick, he played for the San Francisco 49ers in the NFL. He was kneeling during the playing of the national anthem. And he was doing that to protest police brutality and racial inequality toward African Americans. But a lot of people had a hard time with that. They thought it was disrespectful and that, of course, you should stand during the national anthem. But this was his form of protest. So Nike did something that was pretty bold and controversial to use him in an ad. And they had a commercial as well. I encourage you to Google search the commercial. So they knew they were going to definitely get some angry, feedback from this, which they did. So many people actually then had campaigns to boycott Nike, and they were, there were people saying, "I'll never wear Nike again." And they were ripping up their Nike clothes, burning their Nike clothes, all because of this, because Nike supported, and had Colin Kaepernick in their ads. All right, so why are we talking about this? Well, when we looked at the samurai and the knights, we discovered that the way they acted was based on what they valued. So think about it. That's how you act. We all act based on what we feel is important, what we value. So if you believe that, kindness is important and, being good to others, that's how you're going to act. You reflect your beliefs. Okay. So, and that's what we've been focusing on, is this whole idea of honor codes and values and beliefs. So how well do you think people today represent their values through their actions? In this lesson, and as part of your final product, you will be researching a company that reflects your values. You will create your own PSA, a public service announcement, based off of the values and companies you choose in this lesson. So this lesson is really important because it starts you toward your final product. All right, and for the final product, again, we're on the Feudal Honor Codes and Values project. So my lesson is going to go with this one, Personal Values and Consumer Activism. And then you'll see, then after this comes the public service announcement. And then that's going to have you working toward this. That's one of your final products. So product research, public service announcement, these are two of your final products. Okay. So our focus for today is I can demonstrate consumer activism in my own life. So you're going to start out, we always have a read, watch, and a do. So what do you value? So some of you may be able to rattle that off the top of your head, but for some of you, this is good that Summit has a list actually of values. So I encourage you to go through this. It's talking about your core values, what really matters, at your core here. So go through here, look at and write down every value that means something to you, that resonates with you. And then it just has you grouping them together and then choosing one word within each grouping that best represents the label for your entire group. Okay, so maybe happiness, well-being, mindfulness, making a difference, freedom. Okay, so that's your first step. Just pretty simple, just looking at yourself and your own values. Then I thought this was interesting. This goes along with the whole Colin Kaepernick. This is a news segment from a show called Inside Edition, and you're going to learn about the consumer boycott on Nike products. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, it's an example of consumer activism because many people disagreed with using Colin Kaepernick in their ads. So, as a way to protest that, people, you'll watch this news segment here, what they did. They, boycotted Nike products. So you can go ahead and watch that. That's a short little clip. Now, this is important to do this. You have two important things. You can't skip these. You have to do these because it ends up in one of your final products. So you're going to complete this worksheet based on the values you selected from this reading above. So everything you have to do here. So based on your values, your core values, you're going to complete this. Okay, how can we incorporate our values into the decisions we make? So think of everything that matters to us in our lives, our values. How does that impact our decisions in the world? And in this case, consumer, we're buyers. If you're consumers, you're buyers of products. So how does this impact the companies we support and that we buy products from? Step 1, what are values that you personally hold or think are important? List as many as you can. So that is that worksheet that you already did. And step 2, narrow down your values to your top 3. Okay, so this is based on that worksheet you first did. And then step 3, brainstorm. Products or companies that you already think might hold these same values. So are there any companies or different things that you buy that you think reflects your values? Products or companies that you love and you use a lot in order to see if they hold the same values. So like for me, I'm trying to think of something I use a lot. I use, as far as like shampoo, I use Biolage shampoo. I could look that up. Or Paul Mitchell. Cosmetics, I could look up CoverGirl and Maybelline, see what they're doing, if they hold my same values. For example, animal rights matters to me, and animal cruelty, so I could check that with those cosmetics and see, do they test on animals, or are they humane? Maybe you really love UGG boots and you want to research UGG boots, or maybe you like Nike, maybe you like Under Armour, whatever it is you like. Products or companies in the product research. Okay, so there's also a research resource I'll show you here in a second. So step 4, research. Make sure to add any extra rows to this table as necessary. The more you have, the better. So, and let me go back now. So if you're having a hard time just thinking on your own about these different companies, I want you to look here at this other link I gave you in the lesson. Okay, here. The table below has places to get started for some different values that you might want to research. You're also welcome to look for values that are not included on the list. So if you like, if these things are important to you, animal rights, so you're going to want to look here. Veganism. I have a friend in the office who's a vegan, so she would want to look at vegan-friendly businesses. So here it goes to show you. And she told me she stays away from UGG boots. Many of you probably like UGG boots. She told me some things that they do that sound awful. And they use sheepskin. I don't want to go any further, but it says it's like really painful to the sheep, and yeah, so I don't know. I'd have to investigate that more to see if it's true. But so there are things like that, that matter to you. Let me go back up. Maybe it's important about sustainability, like for the environment. You care about the environment, or charitable giving, veterans' rights, rehabilitation, gender equality, like between the sexes, women and men, like the same pay, maternity leave, and then again the environment. So this will get you started to think of ideas if you don't have any just off the top of your head. And then they also give a good idea here. It says, if you know the product or company you want to look up, Google search value plus the title of the specific product. So I would put value plus CoverGirl, for example. If you don't know the product or company you want to look up, but know what value you want to look up, Google search value plus companies or value plus products. So these are good ideas to get you started with your research. Really take the time to do this, because this is all going into your next assignment here with your final product. So then after you do that, you're going to fill out the value. So maybe you put, I don't know, generosity here, or, and then you're going to put, or maybe environmental rights, and then you put the product or company. Note how this matches my value. Link to where I found this information. So just putting the link, and then notes on why I trust this source. It's important to make sure you go to sites that you can trust. That's not just like Joe Schmo's opinion on something. You want to go to a valuable site like a .edu, a .org, or a website you can trust. Okay, so then that will get you started, and then there's just an explain that you answer here. So how would you define consumer activism? And complete this brief true or false quiz on consumer activism to test what you have learned. Then you're going to complete the checkpoint, personal values and consumer activism in Summit. Okay, so when you go to Summit, I'll show you here. Okay, so right here it is. Do you notice this chart? That's exactly what you were already doing in my lesson, okay, in one of the worksheets. So you're just copying and pasting your research. That's all you're doing, the chart you already did. So it's important that you don't skip these checkpoints because it walks you through everything. And then you're going to see that this goes into, if you look on your final product research. Does that look familiar to you? Okay, so after you do this today, you already have a final product done. Woohoo! Product research. And then you can go ahead and look to what you're going to do with the public service announcement. And I could actually release, maybe I'll do that. I'll release this one this week too, so you can get started. Because after this one today, you just have one more checkpoint and then you're done. The final products, which are due Friday the 20th. So not this Friday, but next Friday. So I'll also release this. But yeah, so this you're actually making a public service announcement. So you could either do a video or a poster, but I'll let you read a little bit more and I'll give you more detail on that later. But the first part is just to do this research aspect with the personal values and consumer activism. There is one thing I forgot that I wanted to do at the beginning of the lesson, but I want to point your attention to this here, the consumer activism presentation. When you click on that, it brings you to a slides or PowerPoint. And so consumer activism, what is it and why does it matter? So I touched on it at the beginning with the Colin Kaepernick ad, but I like this because it walks you through it. So I suggest you read this first before you do anything else. But what are some ways that people represent their values through their actions? How well do your decisions, and especially how you spend your money, represent what you value? So think about it. If you're going to buy products, shouldn't you put them toward companies that share your values? If animal rights are important to you, why are you supporting a company that hurts animals or does testing on animals? Consumer activism is one method of doing this. So I really wanted to share this with you. Consumer activism, actions or decisions made by consumers to represent their beliefs in an economic way. This can include boycotting, like I said with Nike, boycotting products they don't believe in, or purposely buying products they do believe in. So in the case of my friend who's a vegan, she doesn't buy Ugg boots. She has this other brand, I think it's called Bear Paw maybe. So that's who she buys from. General examples of consumer activism. Switching to a shampoo brand that doesn't test on animals. Eating at a local restaurant that only uses sustainable seafood. Boycotting, refusing to buy from a company that has business practices which hurt the environment. Okay, so why does it work? Companies care about making money, right? That's the whole point of business. So if people decide to spend their money on a different product, one that they think represents their values more, it can motivate a company to change their practices in order to attract more business. Smaller and local businesses are especially influenced by consumer activism because they usually know their customers better and can have discussions about values and business practices. Even just a few people using consumer activism can impact their business, whereas with large corporations, it can take many people to create change. The thing about the Nike boycott that I talked about at the beginning, it didn't actually hurt their sales. Their sales actually went up, so that's interesting. Okay, and then I'm going to end with this. Specific example of consumer activism. In 2010, Greenpeace, there was a campaign to boycott Kit Kat bars because Nestle, maker of Kit Kat, was destroying rainforests in Indonesia, which was also destroying orangutan environments to get palm oil, an ingredient in their candy. After making parody, that means like funny commercials, and people joined the boycott, Nestle agreed to change their business practices. So that goes to show you the power of consumer activism. So taking a stance, protesting, boycotting products, writing letters, and and just stop buying. If you stop buying a product, that's going to get the company's attention, right? If enough people do it. Okay, so yes, that's consumer activism. I encourage you to go through and read the rest of this. But so now you have a good idea of this. So start thinking.